Tough talk from Russian President Vladimir Putin today about his country's relationship with the United States. He says the U.S. needs to stop interfering with Russia's business.
Putin was speaking at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. CBS This Morning co-host Charlie Rose moderated the forum. Let's take a listen to a bit of that discussion.
Characterize the relationship with the United States. What's wrong with it? What's right with it? What does it need?
The problem consists in they're trying to impose on us their decisions and their standards without thinking about how we understand our own interests. As a matter of fact, they are trying to say that they know better what we need. Let us decide ourselves what are our interests, what are needs, based on our history, on our culture.
Well, earlier we spoke to Charlie about his biggest takeaway from his conversation with the Russian president.
Charlie, you sat down with Russian President Vladimir Putin. What did he say that stood out the most to you?
Well, there are a lot of things that stood out. And when I raised a question about Russia wanting respect of the world and trying to find its place back, he talked about, Russia had respect and didn't need anybody else's respect. I think what he made clear is that Russia wants to be a player. I raised the question of aggressiveness and said, I know you don't like that, but here it is. He doesn't characterize as aggressive, and I pointed out to him that they were funding the separatists and providing Russian soldiers and doing a lot of other things. And he tended to want to blame the government in Kiev for the problems in Ukraine, and the fact that they were not talking, and talked about the Minsk Accords. In the end, I think he wants to talk. And he said that, in fact, that was, for me, the bottom line. That Russia wants to talk about these things. Everybody I talked to, everybody, and I talked to a range of people who knew Russia, to secretaries of state and defense and national security advisors from previous governments, and they all said, we want to know, this is a very important time to ask him, how did we get out of this mess? And I think he thinks it demands sort of talking and cooperating and feeling like they're partners in this. That's the argument they make. The United States will make an argument that, look, we did a lot, we tried to reset the relationship. It's a very difficult administration to deal with. And they worry about a miscalculation. So you have the Russians doing what they're doing, and at the same time you have the U.S. saying we're going to send more arms to the Baltic states as part of NATO, that kind of thing. So you worry about the miscalculation that could take place. He's an interesting man.
To that point, the United States and Russia find themselves at loggerheads on almost every issue, and I'm particularly intrigued by his decision to continue to support Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. You've interviewed Assad. What do you make of that, knowing the destruction?
Actually, what I made of it is that he basically, when I was saying, why don't you do something, because you and Iran are the two principal countries that are holding the Syrians up, his response was, it's not for me, it's for the Syrian people. He didn't say we support Assad. He's very, very concerned, as many other people are, as to what the alternative is. I thought he was very strong on ISIS and who they were and what they were doing, and in fact blames the Iraq War in part for the formation. And there's a small connection in terms of people from ISIS were part of Al-Qaeda in Iraq and were in prison and then went out and formed ISIS now. This is I just read a new book out about him called Tsar. I mean, this is a man who has more power probably in Russia than any other president since Stalin. An enormous amount of power he has accumulated. His popularity ratings are high. Clearly sanctions, which he tended to recognize but say they were dealing with them, have had an impact and created a recession here in Russia. So he's trying to deal with things.
Charlie,
interesting guy. I was on stage with him, and I had 4 other people on stage with me, and I was juggling a lot of balls.
Yeah, we could certainly see that.
Charlie, I'm curious what he sees Russia's role in the world, what he sees it to be. We saw him sort of needling you a little bit when you pushed him on Russian involvement in the Middle East, sort of pushing back, saying you're a real American because you were talking about meddling. But what does he believe Russia should be doing in the world?
Well, I think he thinks they should be playing a role. I think he wants to be part of a conversation having to do with Syria. He wants to be part of a conversation having to do with Ukraine. He wants to be part of a conversation he's having a conversation with China. There's a developing relationship with China. One of the important questions at this conference is Russia and China, which is a look east in contrast to Russia and Europe, which I think is probably a more natural affinity. But at the same time, as you may know, because of Ukraine and other issues, when they marked their 7th anniversary of World War II, in which 30 million people, the Chinese president showed up, no one represented America at that event. And I think they took umbrage at that, and they took umbrage at the United States, urging its Western allies not to do it. I don't know whether they urged them or not, but that's what they think.
Charlie Rose reporting from St. Petersburg, Russia. Charlie, thank you so much for being with us.